All right, folks, in today's video, we're going to talk about the next phase of the SEC versus Ripple lawsuit and literally billions of dollars that are at stake for the company Ripple in regards to this ongoing case with the SEC. What I'm looking forward to most about 2024 is putting this whole case behind us, which will hopefully provide clarity for the entire XRP ecosystem and for the company Ripple and the institutions that are trying to buy XRP from Ripple. That's really the only thing that's at question right now is those institutional sales. And there was a conversation going on Twitter, and I wanted to highlight it as we look forward here. We just got a response from the SEC seeking additional documentation. They want to see all the contracts that Ripple has been doing for all of these post lawsuit sales. Basically, in 2020, when Ripple filed the lawsuit, SEC filed the lawsuit, Ripple then transitioned to only selling XRP to their on-demand liquidity partners. Many of us know that. Well, what Judge Torres ruled was that all of the institutional sales, including those for ODL, were in unregistered securities offerings, investment contracts, essentially. And so now the SEC is asking to get the business records and the financial statements for 2022 and 2023. And they want to be able to see these contracts as well for these ODL sales. Now, many in the community, many of the lawyers, the experts, right, that we've been tapping into, huge shout out to all the lawyers that are keeping us up to date. They've been making the case that ODL sales were probably done differently, and there's a utility there. You don't have an investment in a common enterprise seeking profits. You have, here's money, give us XRP. We're going to use it for cross-border payments. And, it really doesn't even matter what you're using it for. You just don't have that same investment contract that you had with all of the other institutional sales or options contracts, pre-allocation, contracts that we've talked about in the past. And so this conversation was going on Twitter, and I wanted to kind of read some of the comments here, share a little bit more insight in where the next phase of this battle between the SEC versus Ripple case is at, what we should be looking out for, and how soon are we to actually concluding this lawsuit, putting it behind us. While the rest of the space is still going to be waiting for regulations, we already have clarity that XRP in and of itself is not a security. We know from the utility that it is a commodity, and we know that as a means of payment, it is a currency. So people are wondering, thinking that we need to wait around for a specific classification from Congress. We don't. It's a commodity and it's a currency. You just look at how it functions. You look at the payment system. It has the traditional hallmark definition of a commodity and a currency. And it's been called a virtual currency by FinCEN in the 2015 lawsuit. And it was called a digital token, i.e., utility commodity, by Judge Torres. So we have virtual currency, we have digital token in the U.S. court rule of law, and that's all we need. And the clarity that in and of itself, it's not a security. But where we're at in this case right now is we're gonna go through and figure out the damages, basically the punitive damages, the relief, the disgorgement, basically, that needs to be paid by Ripple for these institutional sales that Judge Torres ruled were a security. So the conversation on Twitter was shared here. This post here on Twitter was shared here by Dark Horse. And what he says in this, I'm going to explain why it's not true, but just let me read off this post that he put out. He's sharing the SEC filing for what they're seeking, right? The financial statements and the ODL contracts. And he says, called this in October, could Ripple be enjoined to never sell XRP? That's the part that's not true. This has nothing about them never being able to sell XRP, and I'll explain that why in a second. He says, been asking, and here's the SEC trying to not only get access to the financial statements, but also looking to the judge to enjoin them from ever selling XRP again as a penalty. Okay, let's explain this. So Bill Morgan comes in and he replies and he says, the injunction can only extend to preventing institutional sales of XRP by Ripple unless and until the SEC wins on appeal on the issue of the other two categories of sales that Judge Torres found were not investment contracts, which was the programmatic sales, the sales to exchanges, and the sales, the other sales to their employees, contractors, and what have you. So the only sales that were ruled as securities were to institutions, and what the SEC is seeking is to stop those sales. So what Dark Horse said here, and that the SEC is asking that Ripple never is able to sell XRP again. I'm sure they would love that. I'm sure the SEC would love to absolutely kill this thing, but that's not what they're trying to get. Excuse me. I don't know what's in my throat. Uh, what we're looking at here, though, is only in relations to the institutional sales. And Bill Morgan responds in another post here, and he says, the legal question is whether post-complaint sales to ODL customers meet the Howey test and are unregistered sales of securities. If they do, it strengthens the SEC's argument that a permanent injunction is needed to stop such sales. The interesting factual issue is whether the contracts entered into with ODL customers post-complaint, that's after the lawsuit, contain the same features as the contract with institutional buyers, including ODL customers that Judge Torres found were investment contracts or part of a scheme that was an investment contract. Now, a lot of people think that Ripple is going to appeal that ruling and say, yeah, okay, you could maybe say that some of these institutional sales were securities offerings. The investment contract was there, but the on-demand liquidity contracts we suspect are different. And so we're waiting to see if Ripple does end up appealing on that fact, or maybe they just do a settlement, right? Hence, the SEC is trying to get the disclosure of these contracts. They want to see all of the contracts of ODL sales that took place after the lawsuit was filed. So basically from December 2020 all the way through up to right now, Ripple is still conducting sales of XRP to their on-demand liquidity partners. And I would bet everything that they have sat down with their lawyers and they've structured these sales. Whatever contract is getting signed, I'm sure that it is a very straight up contract with no stipulations, no lockup period, no option, nothing in it that would constitute an investment contract. What I suspect is that you basically have a purchase of sale agreement for a specified amount of XRP at a set price. That's it, which I don't think that that would constitute an investment contract. And I don't think that most lawyers are suggesting that either. So why is billions at stake here? Well, if Judge Torres were to rule that all of these post lawsuit sales were a security as well, the SEC has already cited that that's about $3 billion worth of sales that were conducted by Ripple. So remember, the initial lawsuit was for 1.3 billion worth of sales, and there was three different categories. Judge Torres ruled that two of them were not, securities. Two of those were fine. Only the institutional sales, which equated to about 700 billion, I believe, 700 million, right? So it was 1.3 billion was the total top dollar amount for all of the sales at the very beginning of the lawsuit. Judge Torres ruled that only the institutional sales were, and that portion I think was about 700 million. You guys can let me know in the comments down below what the actual number was. But if the judge, was able to rule that all of these ODL sales from 2020 ongoing till now, 2024, were securities investment contracts as well, the tallies into the billions of dollars worth. It might even be more than that original 3 billion that the SEC has cited. So this is why billions are at stake for Ripple. But I firmly believe that they will be appealing this. If they get a bad ruling from Judge Torres, they don't do any sort of settlement with the SEC, and basically Judge Torres were to say, worst case scenario, yes, all of these ODL sales constitute an investment contract, and the fine is 3 billion, the fine is 5 billion, right? Or even if the fine was 500 million, right? Even on the lower end of these numbers, it was 500 million or a billion. The lower end, I still think that you're going to get an appeal from Ripple, because I firmly believe that they've sat down with their lawyers and they've constructed those sales, those contracts in a way that it is a very clear, not an investment contract. You're not getting any portion of the company. You're not getting any portion of the profits. There's nothing there. When you buy XRP from Ripple to use for ODL, to use for treasury management, there's no sharing of profits in anything, right? If you wanted to hold on to the XRP and you want to speculate on it, going to a higher price and seeking a profit in that regard, that is you making that investment, right? And that's going to be based off the efforts of not just Ripple, the entire XRP ecosystem, which, as we know, XRP on the secondary market, if you're just doing a straight blind bid, ask offer, it's not an investment contract. right? So we already have that ruling. And at this point, the worst case scenario for Ripple would be Judge Torres rules that, yep, ODL sales were investment contracts, serves up a fine of 3 to 5 billion, something crazy like that. Worst case scenario, I don't even think that that's really even potential, but let's just say she does. Ripple's going to have to pay a fine of 3 to 5 billion bucks, right? And of course, I believe they would appeal. And if you go through the worst case scenario, they would lose that appeal and they would be, basically forced to pay a few billion. And then the only way, see, this is where the initial comment from Dark Horse was incorrect, that they would never be able to sell XRP again. That's not true. That's crazy. They still would be able to do programmatic sales. They still would be able to just do, regular sales of XRP straight across the board, XRP for US dollars, XRP for whatever currency, XRP for services. They would be able to pay sell XRP in that way, no problem. So it's, there was someone in the comments that had asked them, what does this mean for burning the XRP escrow? Has nothing to do with that because they have no way of stopping Ripple from selling XRP programmatically to the exchanges. None. Unless the SEC appeals and the SEC wins on appeal. And, then we're talking about a whole nother story. But right now, this is basically down to the institutional sales. What is the relief? What is the disgorgement that the SEC is going to be rewarded for those, investment contract offerings? And now the big question, the big add-on is if they were able to get the post-complaint ODL sales. We're talking about billions of basically sales in question that would have to be paid by Ripple. But nonetheless, what we're looking for is the discovery on this part of the discovery on. Sorry for not having the exact term right in front of me. On basically the disgorgement, the fines, whatever is going to be paid here. The part that Judge Torres did rule was securities, which was the investment contracts. They're doing discovery on that, i.e. the SEC wants financial statements from 2022, 2023. They want to see how much money did you guys make? How many of these ODL sales did you conduct? How many other sales to institutional investors did you conduct? And they want to try to find, and they want to beef this thing up, right? Because they started with 1.3 billion. Judge Torres smacked them down, put them back in their place. And now the portion that she ruled were securities was about, 700 million or something like that. But now the SEC, if they can win on this, they can beef that up and say, no, they sold billions of dollars worth of XRP to institutional investors in investment contracts. They should have registered. They should have came in, and they need to pay a fine of a few $billion or whatever it may be. I think that it's highly unlikely. I think that this might be a point. I don't know if it would be an interesting question for the lawyers if at this point that basically she can split between the ODL sales and the institutional sales, because she already didn't. In the summary judgment ruling from Judge Torres, she ruled that all of the institutional sales, even those for ODL, were investment contracts. So she didn't distinguish. So I don't know if she can distinguish at this point or if that's already too late. And basically her ruling as it stands right now is that all of those were securities. And so basically Ripple is going to be forced to appeal that. The only other thing that I think that would avoid Ripple appealing on this point would be a settlement. Would be basically the SEC saying, we're willing to play ball, we're willing to settle up. But it doesn't look like that's the case. It doesn't look like the SEC wants to settle. So it looks like we're going to conclude the discovery portion of this sometime in the next month or so. And I think that that's actually supposed to, the final deadline is April. And I believe that many of the lawyers are expecting this case to be concluding sometime in the summer. So we're probably well out into May, June at the earliest for a ruling from Judge Torres that would basically say, hey, a billion of this, you need to basically pay a billion in fines or whatever, in disgorgement. And then you can continue on with your business. You can never sell XRP like this again unless you come into the SEC and you register as, you file the forms to register these investment contracts. In that case, Ripple is just going to be able to sell straight to exchanges. And basically everybody's going to be forced to go to the secondary market or go to the, basically just go to the secondary market to get XRP. So it wouldn't stop Ripple from getting rid of the XRP. It would just force them to only sell to exchanges, and everybody would then be fighting over XRP on the public exchanges, which might work out well for supply shock for XRP, and that demand could skyrocket. Um, but nonetheless, what we're looking at right now is for this case to conclude this year for sure. And the earliest timeframes that we're kind of looking at is probably June, July timeframe for this case kind of wrapping up, barring any other appeal. But we have billions on the line for Ripple. I think that they're going to fight like hell. SEC doesn't want to play ball. There's no reason for Ripple to really want to sit down and do a deal and basically just bend over and pay the fine. I see Ripple potentially, appealing on this point and saying, you can say that these institutional sales that were outside of ODL, that had lockup periods, that had other stipulations, that was an investment contract. Sure. They might even appeal on that too. I really think that they might even have a good reason to appeal on that as well. This gets into the weeds though with the stipulations, with lockup periods. But one could argue that you're still not in a common enterprise with Ripple just because we made you lock up some of your XRP, or, we put certain stipulations on that, doesn't mean that you're necessarily in a common enterprise with Ripple. So who knows? Ripple may go and appeal Judge Torres' ruling completely. Who knows? But nonetheless, I'm looking for this case to conclude this year. Ripple and XRP will have full clarity. Institutions that want to get XRP will have full clarity. And this is going to separate us from the whole rest of the space that is still waiting around, basically to be sued by the SEC, or for Congress to finally come around and pass regulations, pass some sort of ruling, come up with a new definition, a new asset class. I don't even think that a new asset class needs to be created. I think that it's just very, very simple. You have a digital version of currencies, commodities, and securities. That's it. The currency, the commodity, and the securities laws go back decades. It's all very clear. I don't think that you need to make a new classification. You're just looking at it. Is it physical gold? Are we talking about? Or are we talking about digital gold? That's it. Is it a commodity? Is it a currency? Is it both? Many of them are both. But you're going to have straight up equities in digital form that will be created. That's just a digital security. You don't need to make up a new asset class. I don't think that you need to make a new government entity. I know many people talk about that, waiting for Congress to give us clarity, waiting for the government to create a new agency. We don't need a new government agency. The books, the precedent on the books in the US goes back decades. It's very clear. All we basically have is the SEC trying to extend their jurisdiction. The CFTC is not trying to extend their jurisdiction. I think that they are rightly saying that most of these tokens are commodities and they are a form of currency. They should be under the jurisdiction of the CFTC in that regard. And if they get packaged up and sold in an ICO, well, that's probably under the jurisdiction of the SEC, because you have investment contract that is being done and created and offered through the ICOs. So to me, it's very clear, cut and dry. The ruling that we got here from Judge Torres just reiterates that and confirms that. She's extending it to these institutional sales, but without being able to read these contracts, it's hard to be able to say whether or not they constitute an investment contract. If I had the contracts in front of me, I could read them off and say, okay, I see these points. I see why Judge Torres ruled that this was an investment contract, because you have some sort of agreement that constitutes an investment contract in a common enterprise with Ripple. The R3 deal is a great example. I think that was an investment contract, because Ripple was telling R3, we want you to introduce us to all your banking buddies and all your friends. We have expectations, and we're both seeking profit through this arrangement for R3 to buy 5 billion XRP at less than a penny for 3 years. That's an options contract. That to me is definitely an investment contract, most likely. Other than that, I think it's pretty clear for the XRP community. There's so much momentum behind us with the utility that's coming our way, folks. It's a great place to be. But nonetheless, I am cheerleading Ripple. I hope that they fight for this thing all the way through. just on behalf of Ripple. They've done so much for the XRP ecosystem, and they're going to be able to do even more if they don't have to cut $1 billion to the SEC. You know, they've already had to spend $200 million. They've already been put way behind. This whole thing's been really has done incredible damages, not just to Ripple, but the entire XRP community. You guys know that. So excited for us to put this whole thing behind us, 2024. Clarity for XRP, clarity for Ripple, clarity for the institutions. We're going to start to see some flip of the switch moments, I believe, after that. So in the meantime, stay focused and locked in, guys. There's actions and, big action that we can be taking right now to secure our future, whether that's starting our side hustle, growing our businesses, getting ready for the real estate reset, looking at other cryptocurrencies. There's a few other cryptos out there that do actually have some utility. Believe it or not, there are a few out there, others out there. And then, just getting tapped in. If you guys want to join our community, it's over at zachrector.com, along with all of our community resources. Just met up with some Discord members yesterday, and that was here while we're in Arizona. Beautiful sun is shining. Absolutely fantastic out here. And if you're looking to get tapped in, like I said, everything is over at zachrector.com. I appreciate all of your support. I appreciate you for liking the video. Drop a comment down below. Let me know how you think this SEC versus Ripple case is going to conclude and what you got for a timeline on the completion of this case that has drug on for over 3 years now. I appreciate all of you guys so much, and I will see you in the next one. God bless.